With us today is our dear friend, Elhayani. He is the head of the Yesha Council, the head of the Jordan Valley Council. He also sees into the future. He did not agree to accept the Trump plan because he saw in the long term. He saw into the future. He saw the dangers. Even when he was there in Washington, he already saw that we will be losing the land of Israel. And he stood and he resisted it. We will talk about again from the era of Trump to the era of Biden. Please, David Elhayani. Good morning, everybody. Let me just repeat and maybe reiterate what you said. Despite what has happened, we continue. A bit about myself. I'm sort of a graduate of Oslo, so to speak. I live in Moshav Argaman from 1983. I have 3 kids. We live on the Moshav. We are farmers. We grow dates. My sons help me. I have 6 grandchildren, another one on the way. My children are married. And 2 of my kids are actually going to be living in the Jordan Valley. In 1993, September 1993, the Oslo Accords took place. A day after the Oslo Accords, we actually formed the Committee of the Jordan Valley Settlements. I was in office until 1999. We led some of, again, the fights, the resistance, the objections. In 2009, I became the head of the Council of the Jordan Valley. And in 2019, November 2019, I was elected to be the chair of the Yesha Council. This, again, 2020 was a very challenging year. When we are talking about the Trump administration, let's talk about the Trump plan. On the 10th of September 2019, the Prime Minister convenes a press conference. It was a dramatic press conference. Do you remember it? And he says, when we form the Israeli government, the new government, we will exercise sovereignty. And then he showed us the map. Remember that yellow map? It was very impressive. And of course, the Jordan Valley, part of the Binyamin area, part of the Dead Sea, were going to be under Israeli sovereignty. We all remember the map. I think it was close to 25% of Judea and Samaria, again, was to be defined as sovereign Israeli land. We were very happy, of course. 2 weeks later, we actually, there was a meeting of the government in the Jordan Valley, and once again the government proclaimed that sovereignty will be applied over these areas. But nothing was true. It was just all an illusion. Because you know why? For 3 years, the Prime Minister sent out delegates to the United States, including ex-vets. And they drew up this map. I will show it to you in just a minute. This is not a map that just, appeared one fine day. They worked on it for 3 years, on every single centimeter. Every line drawn here was calculated. Every line on this map, there is some sort of a logic behind it belonging to either one of the sides. Now, for 3 years, they worked on this map. It was January, it was a Sunday. I was called, I was invited to the airport. And I said, just a minute, what? You suddenly remembered? What's going on? You flying to Washington now? To the ceremony for the Trump plan? You suddenly remembered calling me? And they said, no, come just say goodbye to the Prime Minister. I said, no, I'm not going to go to the airport just to say goodbye to the Prime Minister. So a few heads of the local authorities came in the afternoon. We received a call, please go out and show your support of the Prime Minister. So we really organized ourselves quickly. 5 heads of local authorities And then we arrived in Washington, and on Wednesday we met the Prime Minister. It was an informal conversation. He kind of told us, leaked a little of what was going to be. And then he said to us as follows: look, we did place a lot of sort of checks and balances on the Trump plan, but don't worry, there won't be a Palestinian state. And then that afternoon, we had another informal meeting with one of the seniors of the American administration, and then he started telling us what is going to be. And he said as follows: 24 hours after we again proclaim the Trump plan, you can apply Israeli sovereignty over 30% of the area. And we said, wait, just a moment, what about the other 30%? And he said, no, the other 30%, they are reserved for the Palestinians. And then he said, there is an outline, there is a plan, there is and again, it says as follows: A and B is 40% of the area, add another 30%, that means that 70% of Judea and Samaria will be given to the Palestinians. It's not yours. You will get sovereignty. You have to wait for the Palestinians to enter this plan. What was he saying to us? He said, you can take your little package deal, part of your deal, but the Palestinian package, you're not allowed to touch that. It belongs to them. You're not allowed to touch it. They're allowed to build there. They're allowed to develop. Okay? And when will they enter the plan? When it's convenient for them. Then the penny dropped. And I understood. And I said to him as follows. Yuri talked about masks before. There are all kinds of masks. There are masks that you wear. And there are other human masks. It's a time, the time comes when you have to take off the mask for people to tell the truth and remove the mask. And I said to him, to that senior, I said to him as follows: do you understand that you're about to demolish the Jewish people with this plan? He was shocked. He was not used to this kind of terminology. Americans are not used to this kind of language. I said to him, you have just proclaimed the end of the Jewish people. And he said he didn't understand what I was talking about. And I said to him, I started explaining that 70%, and it's not only 70%, by the way, 70% of Judea and Samaria, that will be Palestinian. It's an existential danger. And this existential danger, it became so much more tangible once we saw the map. I will explain that in a minute. So again, at 5 a.m., I was interviewed on Reshet Bet, on Israeli radio, and I said, I don't believe that my Prime Minister, I was a Likudnik, I was part of the Likud party, I still am. I'm a little more right-wing than the Likud, but again, I'm a Likud man. And I said this on Reshet Bet, on the radio to Esti Perez, I can't believe that my Prime Minister actually was willing to sign his name on this outline, on these lines, on this map. And an hour later, all the heads of the local council started knocking on my door in the hotel, and everyone was shocked because I mentioned that senior from the American administration, and everybody was sort of appalled. People were worried. Did I mention names? And they came again knocking at my door. At 6 a.m., I get a call from the Prime Minister. He probably heard about the interview that I gave to the radio. And he asked, are there other people in the room? I said, yes. And then he said, I want to explain something. He actually wanted to tell me what he was going to talk about in his speech. And he started telling me, that he placed all these checks and balances, meaning he placed all these obstacles to prevent the Palestinians from actually establishing a Palestinian state. Now, what was this like? He said, it's like giving them this great new car, but we took out the engine, and then we gave them the keys and said, go ahead and drive. I will explain later. During the ceremony, of course, we have a very clever Prime Minister. He said to me, David, come join me. Let's go to the White House together. And I said to him, Mr. Prime Minister, I thank you for your invitation, but no thank you. Could you imagine? Again, I'm there, the head of the Yesha Council, and they were actually about to decide to establish a Palestinian state. And I said, no, no way. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be part of this. At 12 noon, the heads of the councils, we convened at the hotel to watch the ceremony. It was a complete surprise, by the way. If you saw the ceremony, and then it was a speech given by the US president, every sentence of his was all about economy, peace, and a Palestinian state. That is what every sentence echoed that. And our prime minister, stood up to talk. And you won't find a single word that talks about a Palestinian state. He avoided saying those words. Now the Americans go crazy. They said, President Obama, during his time, you said 2 states for 2 nations. Now you have Trump, who's embracing you, who's giving you, who's friendly to you, and you are not willing to talk about a Palestinian state? They went crazy. Again, this is part of the tricks. This is part of the trickery. Jonathan Ulrich, right after the ceremony, he tweeted and he said, yes, we're bringing the sovereignty to pass in the Knesset. He's a media advisor. And the Americans understand that they were taken on a ride. That the Prime Minister actually, wants sovereignty, but doesn't want to have a Palestinian state. Again, the Americans believe there's no Palestinian state, there's no sovereignty. Now, how is this manifest? 2 weeks before, King Abdallah was interviewed on a French channel, News 24. And the interviewer asked him, what do you think about the Trump plan? And King Abdallah said, this was a rare expression of his, he said, you have to look at the full half of the cup, the positive sides of the plan. He didn't mean for the Palestinians, again, to be immigrants to America, legal immigrants in America, right? He actually thought about a Palestinian state. Now, what is written in the Trump plan? Okay, I imagine that he had no idea what was actually written in the actual plan. I'm talking about Trump because Kushner actually went around the Middle East to try convince the Arab countries that this plan actually will be giving the Palestinians all their aspirations. How is this manifest? Again, if we're talking about 70% of Judea, Samaria, it's not only 70 in Samaria. There are even areas down south next to the Nitzana area. You can't see it on the map. These are other areas that are actually under Israeli sovereignty, another 10%, and the Palestinians were going to get those as well. That is 80%, not 70%. We'll talk about the map in just a moment. We say to the Prime Minister, Mr. Prime Minister, you're saying there will not be a Palestinian state? So he said, we have to still draw out those lines of that 30%. I called Zambish. I said to him, listen, Zambish, how long will it take you to prepare the map? He said, I need a few days. In the meantime, we came back to Israel. The Prime Minister, if you recall, actually went to Russia. And he came back to Israel after that. He invited us to his home. There was another 3, Zambish, another head of a council, and myself. And Zambish says to the Prime Minister, the map is ready. Okay, now you have to prove what you talked of. And the Director General of the office, again, blurted out some unclear things, sort of pushed us off. Said, let's talk about it later. And then I understood that there was no sovereignty here. It was just one big fraud because he just wanted to trick the Americans. And the Americans said, no, this is not going to be. There will not be sovereignty without a Palestinian state. So we took a look at the map and we started analyzing it, and we said to ourselves, wow, I want to show you how dangerous this map is. This entire red region on the map, look there, this is the Palestinian state. The red area, this is the Palestinian state. Now, what did the Prime Minister say? He said we have to again draw out 850 kilometers. It takes time. Do you know what that means? 850 kilometers at once has to draw up. It's even more than the borderline with Syria and Jordan and Egypt together. I mean, our borders with all those countries is 720 kilometers. Here we're talking about 850 kilometers of borders. How can we, again, watch over these? Now, the Americans, being as smart as they are, what did they do? They, in order to convince the Palestinians that this is the best way for them to get a state, and that there is no other solutions, they convince the Palestinians as far as, look, you have this territorial succession. Again, you have this a stretch of territory. On the other hand, there are roads for Jews and there will be roads for Palestinians. Okay, there will be no joint roads. All the yellow lines that you see here before you are actually, again, roads for Palestinians only. So what did the Americans say? Okay, how can we create access to Jordan for the Palestinians? Let's give you these checkpoints, these border points. You'll be able to go through, and there's an Adam point, there is Allenby point, a cross point near Jericho, and those will be border crossings, and so you'll be directly connected to Jordan, and again, geographically speaking, you'll have access. What does this mean? By the way, this is again a border checkpoint. That means that every quarter, according to this plan and agreement, the Americans and Israelis are supposed to sit together and decide on matters of security. But nobody told them that they cannot bring tourists there, right? Tourists in inverted commas, yes. Tourists from Lebanon, tourists from Syria, tourists from Iran, tourists from Tehran. Nobody said that they can't do that, meaning we might find ourselves that these, in a situation where these border crossings are open and anybody can enter. Okay, they said, you know what, let's try convince them, continue to convince them. Let's give them, in the Dead Sea area, we'll allow them to build some hotels so that they'll have this tourist area. Okay, another gift for them, another gift. So again, if you look at this map, we basically turned ourselves into enclaves, and they will become a state. More than 16 yeshuvim not only turned into enclaves, but became isolated yeshuvim, isolated settlements. And in the actual agreement, again, we're talking about Alon Mareh, Itamar. Can you see those little blue enclaves, like these little bubbles, isolated bubbles? Again, and you see those yellow lines that connect them to supposed sovereignty. You see Bracha, Yitzhar, Itamar, Karmei Tzur, Nokdim, Asaf, Otniel. Just to understand, in order to reach those settlements, those yeshuvim from Jerusalem, you actually have to bypass from the south. Now, if you look at the rest of the yeshuvim, we are talking about isolated settlements, 16 settlements, more than 20,000 people. Now, what is written in that agreement, in the Trump plan? It's written, I want you to just notice the terminology. It's written, the residents in these isolated settlements will be able to choose whether to stay or leave. Could you just, do you understand? They can choose. They will have a choice. Meaning, because if their underlying assumption is that in such a reality where we have isolated settlements with Palestinians all around, nobody will want to be there. This is an evacuation plan. This is not an outline. Indeed, when settlements like Telem and Aduram or Karmei Tzur that are isolated, what do you think will happen? What will the Palestinians do? They'll bring them meals on Friday and Shabbos. They'll give them flowers. What will they do? they will make their life miserable. They will conduct terror attacks. They will make their life miserable for them to leave. So I told Ariel, my friend, I don't understand how can you support this plan. Take a look at this map. This is Ariel. Look. Look, this is Ariel. It's like a little finger. It's like an enclave. You are surrounded by Palestinians. You will not be able to develop. How can you support this plan? You will not be able to expand. In such a reality, Ariel will disappear. We are not talking about the Europeans. We're not talking about the Swiss. We're not talking about the British. And look what is happening with the Arabs today. Try to understand what might happen in such a reality. And I said to them, you know, you're bringing Gaza into Judea and Samaria. Now in Gaza, 900 and something square kilometers, this is tenfold. This is tenfold the area. And when we are talking about such a reality in which they actually are right, they overlook Tel Aviv area, this is an existential danger. So I, as the head of the Yesha Council, I don't have a kippah. I'm a secular Jew. You know, I could say, you know, quite naturally, and if I look again at the map, let me just show you, I could have said, thank you very much. The entire Jordan Valley, look, is under Israeli sovereignty. Wonderful, the whole stretch. All my Yeshuvim are under Israeli sovereignty. I could have said, thank you very much. Wonderful, please apply sovereignty. But no, I have responsibility. I said, if this means, and again, I'm once again saying, I'm a secular Jew. My area is safe, so to speak. Now, I could say, you know, sovereignty in Jordan Valley, okay, it's good enough for me, but I did not say. I said sovereignty. If there's no sovereignty, again, I'm not going to agree to this. I want sovereignty everywhere. So don't think for a minute that this map is off the agenda. The minute one draws up a plan, it is there to stay. It's on the table. It might even be there for future negotiations. You know, it might still be on the table for improvement or whatever it may be. So, you know, the Prime Minister said, yes, we created checks and balances. So we placed all kinds of obstacles for them. Okay, we said the Palestinians have to first build national institutions like courts and banks. And they have to dismantle the Hamas. They have to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. And now, let's talk about that Mercedes, the car that I mentioned before, that metaphor that I gave. You know, the King Abdallah, he's the guardian of the Palestinians. Everything that happens here, you know, they immediately can call King Abdallah, and he either gets, there are sanctions or he gets free water. Okay, that's what King Abdallah does. He's their guardian. Now, Kushner sold this idea to him that there will be a Palestinian state here in Israel. When the Americans understood that, they stopped when we said that we want sovereignty with no Palestinian state. They halted this process. You know, at the beginning they said maybe let's not talk of 30%, let's talk of 15%. And what happened at the end? The Americans said, no problem, 15%, 20%, all good and well. However, every centimeter that you receive, you will have to give a centimeter to the Palestinians in return. Why? Because Trump is a businessman. What does that mean? It means no, he never wants to be put in a situation where somebody will blame him for, bringing through a bad deal. As a good businessman, he has to preserve his good name. That means that there will be no sovereignty, because the Prime Minister thought he could trick the Americans and apply sovereignty without a state. But this wasn't the case. So if there's anybody here among you, you are, adults, if anyone here may be still innocent and naive, oh, that's all good and well, it's really cute. But if somebody may still think that Abraham Accords with the UAE, that the Prime Minister, again, was involved in them, you are naive. It was all done by the Americans to help Trump in the elections. That is all. I even used an expression, I was attacked for it, that Trump is not a friend of Israel. Everybody started attacking me. How could you say such a thing, that Trump is not Israel's friend? Somebody who is Israel's friend does not draw up such a map. Somebody who is a friend, a real friend, says you can apply sovereignty over all the areas. Somebody who is a real friend says only you will determine what your interests are in terms of security and otherwise. What do we tell our friends? Friends or people that, you sometimes agree with them, you sometimes don't agree with them, but even if you do not agree, you still remain friends. You can say, you are my friend, I don't agree with you, but I will respect you. But we have a leadership that is afraid of taking decisions. We are not the 51st state of the USA. We are, yes, we love the Americans, they love us, they are our friends, that is true, but they live thousands of miles away from here. Just let me give you a tiny example about this absurdity in the assumption that others should determine for us. A commander in the army, Elhayani, once said to me, he's a major general, when the Americans wanted to meet him, when he was the deputy chief of staff, and he didn't know why they urgently want to meet with him, and he received them, and they said to him, you put at risk the water territory of some sort of a warship. That's what he said, and he said to them, how did we do that? So the American said to them, you actually conducted some sort of experiment in the Palmach area with missiles, and they said to him, your test missile fell 40 miles away from our American warship. Yes, you endangered our waters. So he said to the Americans, do you know what the distance is between the Jordan and the Mediterranean? 63 kilometers. That is far less than that safe zone around an American warship. And you're coming to preach to us what our security interests are? Okay, what do the Americans see? They see a map. They don't see reality. So yes, Trump is no friend of ours, because if he were our friend, he would say to us, people, apply sovereignty, damn the Palestinians, but whatever it may be. We talked about the sovereignty. I mean, it stuck because it was sold. They created this very dangerous correlation between the Abraham Accords and sovereignty. It's not written on paper. Yes, it's exactly. It's territory for peace. Okay, because we are talking about areas. It is areas for peace. Okay, we are swapping areas for peace. We are the areas, and the peace part is the UAE. Okay, if you want our plan, Trump said, no sovereignty. Now, Israelis, the UAE is kilometers away, and Israelis want to do shopping there, that's all. What is more important? Peace with countries that never fought us, we were never at war with them. Again, in comparison to applying sovereignty over 60% of Israel, that is lack of responsibility. That doesn't show any form of leadership. I was really attacked for saying all I did, but then we went to check it out. And then we did find out that he wasn't such a great friend after all, because in the last 4 years of Obama, now Obama wasn't considered to be a very friendly guy towards Israel. We actually went to check things out. Okay, so I'm not talking about the first 4 years of the first term, because during his first term, Obama's first term, in 2010, I don't know if you remember, but I will remind you, our prime minister back then went to the media. There was a Bar Ilan speech, and he talked about 2 states for 2 nations. Nobody asked him to say that, by the way. Nobody said go and proclaim that. He went of his own accord and said 2 states. Again, this was the basis. Because he said it was the basis, the 2-state basis. Now here we have a map. I don't know what's going to be in future. And then the Prime Minister suddenly froze construction and building. Nobody asked him to do that. How does he explain freezing the building? And he said that if we had not stopped the building and construction in Judea and Samaria, maybe things would have been worse. What kind of an explanation is that? Maybe things could have been worse. We don't need anybody to tell us what we have to do here in the land of Israel. After that, after again freezing the building, let me take those 4 years, the second term, Obama. The last 4 years of Obama, in comparison with Trump's 4 years, we actually started building in Judea and Samaria. We started building 9,600 housing units. You know how much it was in Trump's time? 6,200. Okay, 65% less than during Obama's time. So yes, a friend, are you kidding me? That friend actually said that the various planning committees, right? Okay, the general planning committees would convene once in a quarter. Now, this is a professional committee. It's not a political committee. Who sets the agenda? Who sets the timing of this committee? It's the government and the Prime Minister. That is why he succumbed to the Americans. That he froze again the building and stopped the plans for 4 months, and then for another 9 months. And again, we are talking about during a time of a friendly president. So I don't like anybody to tell me again that he's a friend. We have to judge things by reality and by deeds. Okay, when we started again, I told you the numbers of the building, the new units that was started off. You saw the numbers. Okay, so he brought the embassy to Jerusalem. So I said, okay, so what? So the embassy moved to Jerusalem. I mean, the international community, did it recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel? No. The world did not recognize Jerusalem just because the embassy moved there. So beyond that proclamation and the announcement, the official announcement, and moving the embassy to Jerusalem, or Trump's proclamation about the Golan Heights, that it's Israel sovereign territory, did it change anything in reality? No, it did not. If anything could have changed reality, and it could have had really a lasting effect for generation, it would have been applying sovereignty. And we did have a chance to do it. There was a real chance for it. Beyond the fact, beyond the political aspects, I had some really hard claims and some problems with all those the soft statements that have to do with incitement and racism in the USA. I was asked, why are you going into this? No, we as Jews who went through the Holocaust, should we sit on our laurels and not say when we see something wrong? We have to express again our opinions. Even to such a person who moved his embassy, we have to call out when there is incitement, when there is racism. We can say this to Trump. So sovereignty at the moment is not feasible. It's not on the agenda. I could expand on that, but I was asked to end. Let me just conclude. conclude by saying that we have no idea what kind of government we will have here in Israel, what kind of constellation it will be. But let me say one thing, there will not be sovereignty, because when I look at the leaders that we have, I don't think any one of them has the courage. And yes, this is courage. You have to understand this. You know, we're always bashed and attacked. And we're always on the defensive. You know, our army is called the Israeli Defense Forces. Okay, people, you know, they are missiles, so we put Iron Dome. We were attacked, so we build safe rooms. We're always on the defense. We have no courage. We have no courage to apply sovereignty over Eretz Israel. You know, maybe this generation doesn't deserve it. But we are looking for that one leader that will rise up and say, Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, belongs to the Jewish people. Nobody will decide for us what is good and what is bad. I was in the IC conference, I think it took place in Miami, if I recall, and Trump, you know, told us the story of the embassy. David Friedman was asked to prepare, you know, just some sort of an outline, an estimate of how much it would cost to move the embassy to Jerusalem. He saw the sum. You know, he talked about being a businessman. He said he saw the sum, how much it would cost. And he said he became very anxious. What is this crazy amount of money? And then, you know, David Friedman said, look, we don't need this. We can move the embassy with far less expenses. I think you did, both you and Nadia, and all those people who supported, again, the sovereignty. I think you actually supported our position. I think you understood where we're coming from. And just like others who saw the Trump plan as an existential danger, again, I truly believe that we saved the people of Israel by not accepting this plan. You know, somebody once said to me, you know, Pinchas Wallenstein actually argued with me, and he said, David, look, Ben Gurion, you know, they gave him the partition plan, and David Ben Gurion said, whatever they give us, we will take. And I said, since, you know, we cannot have a simulation here, this is not a computer game, try and imagine, I said to Pinchas, if Ben Gurion would have said, even centimeter, would not give up on even 1 centimeter, where would we be today? Maybe we would suddenly be in a state without a single Arab. Maybe. So all those who joined us at the end of the day, kudos to you. Yesha koach, well done for joining us, because what we saw, others did not see. You talked about awareness. This is awareness. To put it into your awareness, let me just say one more sentence. You know, Voltaire, who was a French philosopher, he was an anti-Semitic philosopher, but he said a very wise sentence. He said that there are 2 types of thieves. There's a simple thief. He steals, you know, petty thefts from the store, wallets, pickpockets, and from homes. And there's another type of thief. That is the thief that steals people's awareness. He tricks them, steals their mind, steals their health, steals their education. That's a different kind of thief. That is the difference between the 2 types of thief. That the second thief, you actually choose him to come and steal from you. So don't fall in that trap, okay? And I left the Likud not because I hate Bibi, not because I don't love him. I'm leaving the Likud for one simple reason. Our Prime Minister is not a right-wing person. He voted for the Hitnatkut, okay, for the disengagement, for the evacuation. He talked about a 2-state solution. The Hebron Accords, he signed that. He froze construction. He had the opportunity, let me remind you, he had this golden opportunity, again, to really kick off the table the Talia Sasson committee and to adopt the Edmund Levy plan. He did not evacuate Khan el-Ahmar. He did not officialize the young settlements. So I don't see, this is not a right-wing person. Just a word about Biden, please, Biden. And then we have to finish. Biden is 78 years old. 78. I don't think he will give us a hard time. He won't really disturb us. He has other things to deal with, okay? I'm more concerned about other people in his administration. He has Alzheimer's. Aren't you concerned about his illness? You know, tomorrow we might find ourselves with Harris. That's problematic. Harris. But let me tell you what my position is. It makes no difference who the president of the USA is. It depends what we do. It has to be the last question. What government, again, what government would you like? I would like 65 members of Knesset. We have them actually right-wing 65 members of Knesset, but I don't think it's going to happen. I was the first one already 3 months ago, stood up and said the Prime Minister has to go home. There are enough good people in the Likud, enough right-wingers who can fill his position, honest people who love the land of Israel, who will never give a centimeter of our territory and will safeguard our interests. He has to just go home. That's all I'm saying. Unfortunately, I don't see it happening. Again, that would be my first priority as a right-winger. I would like to see a right-wing government after 12 years. You know, we hardly, had right-wing governments. You know, at the head of a local council, let me just say that as the heads of local councils, we are directly responsible for a few millions citizens, and we are responsible for all aspects of their life. Now, the fact that there is no budget and there is no government for 2.5 years already, it is hurting us. So I think that any government that will be formed, again, if we have to fight it, and we might have to, I might say that again, if that, sort of what they call that government of change might formed, we might suddenly discover that the Likud is more right than we think. But at the moment, they actually forgot what it means to be right-wingers. I was part of the Likud. The Likudniks have forgotten what it means to be right. Again, how was this expressed? For 12 years, they did not invest in infrastructure, in electricity, in water. They had the opportunity, they didn't do it. Thank you. Thank you to our friend David Elhayani. Again, we're so lucky, thank God, that David was the head of the Yesha Council, and thank God he still is, and he really does take care of the real interests of those settling the land. David said one thing, the sovereignty will not come off the table. It will be on the agenda. We will not let it go off the agenda. It all depends on what we do. It's in our hands. We can decide, again, if it remains applicable or not. Let's continue. We have to continue to preserve the awareness with our youth, by the way, to just keep talking of sovereignty.